indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Chambers, would you take roll, please?
Mr. Harrison.
Here.
Ms. Pavlik.
Here.
Mr. Ross.
Here.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Here.
Mr. Skidmore.
Here.
Thank you.
Before we get to the approval of the agenda, just to make a general comment, we want to welcome everybody that's here tonight. The district got information that there might be more people than we get sometimes in our professional development room. So we're glad you're here. We know you all have interest in the schools, and that's why you're here, and we appreciate everybody, your participation, and look forward to having a period of time of public participation later on in the meeting. If you have interest in that, hopefully you've signed in with Lisa at the front desk, and you can register for that. But again, we know everybody's passionate because they love their schools, and we hope that we'll all have a spirit of cooperation and the fact that we all want what's best from Medina City Schools. So we want to welcome you. Thank you for being here. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, and I'll second it also. First and a second, okay. Any questions or comments? He's got the first, I've got the second, that's fine. Any questions or comments on the agenda? I mean, the action items I think will be done separately, 1, 2, and 3 at this point, okay? Okay, if you could call roll, please.
Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore.
Aye.
Mr. Harrison. Ms. Pavlik.
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Aye.
Thank you.
And Dr. Kwalik, we're glad to have you here tonight, standing in for Mr. Sable, and we'll turn the meeting over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Skidmore. I'm going to let Mr. O'Call. Mr. Sable's going to say a few words to everyone here.
I'd like to thank Mr. O'Call for wiring me into the meeting this evening. I'd also like to thank Dr. Kwalik for coordinating this evening's meeting as well. I do want to apologize for not being there. Unfortunately, I'm dealing with some medical issues, which I wish you could plan, but you can't because the planning is not good with the start of the school year coming up. I am seeing doctors through the Cleveland Clinic and undergoing some testing, and I'm feeling pretty confident through the health care that I'm receiving that I'll be back to normal within the district in a very short period of time. Until then, we've got outstanding people in place, making sure things continue to move forward despite COVID. In addition, I'm working from home as well. If there's one thing we've really learned to do over the course of the past year, it's to be mobile in our ability to work. So I do want to thank our administrative team for continuing to work with me, even from a distance over the past week or so. I did want to share a little bit of my feedback in regards to COVID in the coming school year. Unfortunately, we still are facing the COVID situation heading into the school year. I know everybody was hoping that COVID would be well behind us heading into the school year and we would be facing normalcy. I don't know what normalcy is going to be in the long run, but I don't think we're still there. So we're still having conversations within the district of how we can keep our students and staff safe with the return to school and how we can keep our students in the school buildings, because we do feel that they can receive the best education if we're teaching them within our school walls rather than virtually. I would like to thank all of our parents, and I do understand that we have a group of parents there this evening. Throughout the course of last year, throughout the summer, and especially over the course of the past several days, I've been fortunate to receive a lot of feedback from parents in our community as well as some of our students. Lots of varying perspectives. whether it's in regards to wearing masks, not wearing masks, into keeping our schools clean, whether we're using sanitization stations. Even though there's varying views, there's one common view, and that's that everybody wants our students in school and wants to keep them in school. I think it's important that we really center around that common theme and that common goal to keep our students in school. In doing that, we do have to put some COVID procedures into place for this coming school year. We did have our students in session for most of last school year, which not every school district can say. I think that's put us into a much better position heading into this school year because we've learned quite a bit from last year. We are taking what we learned from last year and implementing it as we head into this school year to continue to ensure the safety of our students and our staff into the new school year. A challenge that we continue to face, and I've mentioned this in the past, is the balancing act of providing the absolute best academics for our students while maintaining a safe environment for our students and staff. And it's that balance that we are going to continue to try and maintain to the best of our ability. This evening, Dr. Kwolek's going to go through and share the COVID procedures that we've put together as an administrative team for opening up the school year. These procedures are based off of things that we had in place last year, as well as collaborations with surrounding school districts and the health department. I know there's various opinions in regards to the procedures that we're looking at, and I'm not sure we will ever get to a place where everybody will completely agree. I do think it's important that our parents and our students know how important it is to us as educators and as a board to ensure the safety of our students and staff. And that has to come even before the academics, because if students are sick, obviously it's a challenge delivering the academics. With that being said, we would not implement any COVID procedures that we thought would cause students to become ill or could put us in a position where we couldn't keep a building open. We are trying to put procedures into place to provide the greatest amount of flexibility for our students and staff, not only with the COVID procedures, but also with how those procedures impact academics. The procedures that we're going to start the school year with may not stay the same throughout the year. And I know that that was at times a frustration last school year because sometimes our procedures or our expectations would change on a week-to-week basis. I do want to warn our community and our parents that we very well could be in a similar situation this school year. I know we said it before that this is our first pandemic. We're still in our first pandemic, but it's year 2. So we're using what we've learned, and we're continuing to learn. With the start of the school year, we are strongly encouraging the use of masks by our students and our staff. The use of masks has shown to limit the spread of the COVID virus. And in addition to that, it could have a major impact on what happens with quarantining. We are mandated as a school district to continue to contact trace, which no doubt will result in some quarantines. the wearing of a mask or an individual being vaccinated can have an impact on whether an individual goes into quarantine or how long they are quarantined. We will be collaborating with the health department per requirements as these types of situations arise during the school year. It's within the health department's authority to look at quarantines and mandate quarantines. As we proceed through the school year, we do want to allow our students flexibility as well as our staff in regards to the mask usage as well as other COVID procedures. We are going to have things like social distancing as well as sanitation procedures in place. They're not going to be quite as stringent as they were last year. We will be monitoring the COVID situation on a daily basis. This is what we did last year, and we found success in daily monitoring and daily adjustments. I think the best example of this is last winter we ended up putting Roots virtual for a couple of weeks when other schools in the district weren't virtual. And that was completely based off of the statistics, the data, the information, the enrollment, the attendance of the students and staff within that building, and trying to control the spread of the COVID. We're going to continue to watch those numbers, not only on a building basis, but on a district level as well. And we'll make adjustments throughout the year if we need to ensure the safety of our students and staff. We'll do the opposite as well, just like we did at the end of the school year. If we see things are going very well and we see a reduction in the COVID numbers, we want to provide our students and our staff with as normal of a school year as possible. So at this time, I'd like to turn things over to Dr. Kwolek to run through some of the discussion items on tonight's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sable. So we're going to start with opening day. We're going to shift topics a little bit, and then we'll get back to COVID procedures, which I know is a lot of the reasons why you're here today. We're excited to welcome our students back on August 17th, back to school, which is in a very short time this year. On August 11th, we welcome our new staff back. That's something we haven't been able to do. So on August 11th, we'll welcome back all our new staff from the last 2 years. We have a lot of new staff, and actually just today we're still in the process of hiring staff. We hired administratively a new assistant principal at Root that you'll be hearing about shortly, and just the end of today we wrapped up hiring a new associate principal at the high school that we'll get a press release out about as well. So we're very excited for the hiring, and we want to thank our HR department who's been working more than overtime to get those done this summer. So, and then on August 13th, it will be our first staff day, and we'll welcome all our staff for opening day to this facility, and then we'll also be training our new staff on the new evaluation procedures. So it still feels like summer, but it's certainly coming quickly to the middle of August when we'll welcome everyone back pretty fast. So I don't know if the board has any questions about that. You guys are all invited to those events, and I think Lisa has gotten you out an invitation as well. So with that being said, I'm going to cover our third item, which is strategic plan, and then we'll move into the COVID procedures. Aaron and I wanted to provide the board an update on the strategic plan, and I want to thank the community as well. A lot of community members and staff and students were involved in creating our strategic plan. So to give you an update on that, where we're at right now is we are looking at forming goals and finalizing our strategic plan. So our hope is to get the board and a community an update on that strategic plan next month in September. And again, remember, we're in the last year of our prior strategic plan, so we're a little ahead of the game. So we'll be able to provide you an update on where we're at with the last strategic plan, and then also show you where we're at moving forward. So that works together in unison with our portrait of a bee, and then moves forward with where the district's headed in the future. So those are some exciting things happening in the district. Any questions on that? Okay. Then let's move forward, and Ryan, if you click on the link, these are the district's COVID guidelines for the year. And I want to focus on some of the things Mr. Sable shared. Again, when I was at the high school, we asked for some compassionate flexibility. Again, things are always changing. We're looking to keep up with those, but also, as Mr. Sable said, keep our students safe while trying to maintain some flexibility, but ultimately keep our students in the buildings. And so I think that's a goal no matter why you're here to speak or what you're here to speak about. I think we all share that same goal. So keeping that in mind is really important, and knowing that we share that same goal to keep our students in the buildings and provide a good academic environment for them as well. So with that being said, a couple important things before we get into the details is to know that this is up to date as of August 6th. So I know that today is the 9th, but that's when we finalized this plan and put it together. If we've learned nothing else during COVID, we've learned to say it's up to date as of right this minute, because we don't know when things will change or when something else will come about. So that's again why we ask for some compassionate flexibility. And I know Amy's worked really hard to make sure what plan is on the website has dates on it, and we put things like, you can see, these guidelines are subject to change. Again, we'll put dates to things. This is also going to get sent out to parents and families after this board meeting, and we'll also have it on our website for you as well. So the first item is facial coverings. Again, these will be highly recommended but not required for students and staff. The exception to this is on vehicles, because the CDC has mandated that facial coverings are required on all public transportation. And we have reached out to the governor's office and the attorney general's office, waiting on an opinion, but at this point we have not been told differently. I know there's been some discussion if school buses are public transportation, but at this time we've been told they are considered public transportation. So we are going to move forward with that until we're told otherwise. So at this point, school buses are considered public transportation, and that is a mandate from the CDC that masks are required on public transportation. The other thing I know you heard Mr. Sable talk about, and we will put on our website, is there are additional quarantining guidelines out from the Ohio Department of Health, and we can't stress enough that those are the guidelines we're going to follow. And if you have masks on and you follow some of the other guidelines in there in terms of distancing and masks, you are less likely to be quarantined. So we want to make sure we are totally educating our parents. So in our communication, we'll explain that to you. But the health department is directing us that if a student has a mask on and or are vaccinated, they are less likely to be quarantined. So again, not our guidelines, just what we're required to follow. So we'll share some more information about that as well. In terms of social distancing, the buildings will maintain 3 feet distance whenever possible. So we are bringing all our students back. So wherever possible, the teachers and staff are placing desks 3 feet apart. In some classrooms and in some areas, it won't be possible to sit students 3 feet apart, but we will do that whenever possible. One of the big areas of concern we heard from parents and students was hallways, arrival, and dismissal. So those procedures will be monitored by your principals, and they'll put procedures into place so that there's not a lot of gathering at arrival and dismissal, and that hallway traffic keeps moving so that there's not congregating during those times as well. Shields and dividers may be used when deemed appropriate, including places where social distancing is not possible. So we've left all the shields and dividers in the buildings, and that will be, staff may use those, but again, per the quarantining rules, shields and dividers do not replace masks. So they are not going to be used as you saw them last year because they don't limit quarantine. Transportation, I shared a little bit about before. Masks are mandated on all school vehicles per the CDC's most recent order, so we are following that order. The other reason is because we are returning school transportation to pre-COVID levels, so high school busing has returned, so there is going to be more students on busing because we were able to spread out the buses that were used at the high school to other levels. So because the buses are going to be more crowded is an additional reason to follow what is the CDC mandate. We are continuing, the CDC guideline is that staff and students are expected to self-monitor for symptoms prior to and during the school day. So we will continue to provide that checklist for students and staff on our website. That is the checklist, and Ryan, if you want to click that, it's the checklist many of you are familiar with. It's the same one we utilized last year for parents to utilize before they send their student to school in the morning. So it would be a parent's call to determine if it was appropriate to send their child to school. And then this will be the checklist our nursing staff will be using as well, whether to call you or not call you. Again, it's not one symptom, so nobody should be calling you to say your child has a stomach ache, we suspect COVID. It would have to be multiple symptoms. Open house and meet the teacher night. We think it's very important for our students to get to see their classrooms, to be in person in their buildings, to see where they're going to school. So we are going to do open house and meet the teacher night as has been done in the past. The only exception we would ask for is that parents come or guardians come, but only bring the student that's attending that building to try to limit the number of people at the buildings during that time. Again, in terms of quarantining rules, exposure is 15 minutes or less, so our hope is that at open house, you're not necessarily within 3 feet of the teacher for 15 minutes or more. So while the buildings will have a lot of people in them, they won't all be around each other and in close proximity for 15 minutes or more. And again, we're weighing that with the importance of having the kids see their teacher, meet their teacher, and be in the classroom that they're going to be in for that day. In terms of volunteers and visitors, we are not allowing visitors in the building. That was a recommendation as well from the CDC to limit non-essential visitors. And we are not going to allow volunteers in the buildings, and that would include such things as parents at lunchtime and classroom parties. So as much as we can limit visitors, we're going to continue to do that at this time. In terms of parent meetings, we got a lot of feedback that parents preferred virtual meetings. Staff liked them as well. So we wanted to hold most meetings virtual, but we wanted parents to know if they would like an exception to that, to just talk with the building principal in regards to getting an exception to that. But for the most part, we'd prefer if all parent meetings were virtual, so we can, again, limit visitors to the building. Water fountains are no longer limited by the health department, so all water fountains will be open in our buildings. They won't have the coverings on them anymore. Same thing with locker rooms. Locker rooms will be opened and social distancing will be maintained while in use. So some of your kids had to bring home their equipment at the middle school level because they couldn't store it in the locker room, so they were bringing it back and forth. All the locker rooms will be open for use. No shared food for students, which is usually is a rule, but what we're specifically talking about is we don't want shared food brought in like birthday treats or other items. I know this is a separate item, but it was very important. Singing is allowed this year, so it was something that at one point was not allowed per mandates because of the particle spread, so singing is allowed this year. Dancing, no, it's not Footloose, so dancing's always been allowed. Rob asked about dancing. You guys are a tough crowd. I'm trying here. We gotta, if you can't laugh, what do you do? So clubs and after-school activities, again, we're trying to provide our students opportunities. So clubs and after-school activities are allowed to be brought back, but not if they require a large amount of volunteers. Again, we're trying to limit non-essential volunteers in the buildings. And then we just want to make sure the public is fully informed about contact tracing. So if you do get a call, that we've, on the front end, explained to you how contact tracing will work. So I'm going to add to this document the Ohio Department of Health's contact tracing rules, because they've changed again in a good way for the most part, and that is if you're vaccinated, if you're masked, there's some different requirements. And again, I understand that everyone doesn't have the opportunity or has made the choice to be vaccinated, so if you're masked, there's also some other requirements. And if you're neither, that's okay too. I just want people to have the information. So if we're unfortunately calling you to talk about contact, you know the flow chart we're going to go through with you. So we will include that as well in here. There's also a test out option, and that came about later in the year, so that if you are quarantined, you do have the ability to take a test and return to school sooner than if you don't. So I don't know if the board has any questions about that or any comments.
Just wanted to comment on the flow chart. Is that okay? It says if somebody is in contact with an individual that has coronavirus and they are vaccinated, it says they're still allowed to stay. It says individuals can remain in the normal in-person classroom setting and participate in extracurricular activities as long as they have no symptoms.
Ryan, I shared that flow chart with you, if you want to pull it up. So say that again, Ryan, I'm sorry.
Okay. So this flow chart, sometimes it's a little confusing. Maybe that's just me. If an individual comes in contact with a person who has COVID and they have been vaccinated, that means they can still remain in the in-person classroom and participate in extracurricular activities as long as they have no symptoms. But do they, then what? Do they have to, they still have to get a test, right?
Well, you have to start at the top. So does the school have all the following in place? So it's very possible that the answer, so the answer to that is going to be no for the most part. So then you're going to go down to, is the contact vaccinated? So that's your first question. Yes. So then if they're vaccinated, you're going to go to the yes, which is blue. Then yes, Ron, you're absolutely correct. And that's what I mean about the quarantining rules have lessened tremendously. So if you're vaccinated, you can, even if you're exposed, return to school, but you must wear a mask. So if you're willing to wear a mask, even though you've been exposed, if you're vaccinated, you can return to school. If you're not vaccinated and you didn't wear a mask, you must quarantine. So that's why I think it's important for us to get this out to parents so you have time to look it over and ask questions before we're calling you and trying to explain this for the first time.
And this came from the Center for Disease Control? This came from the CDC or from Ohio?
This is from the Ohio Department of Health.
Department of Health, okay.
So again, we're not quarantining. This is what the health department will do. We do not quarantine students. This is just from the Ohio Department of Health. These are the questions they're going to ask if your child was in contact with someone with COVID, whether in school or anywhere else. But these are new quarantining procedures if your child was exposed in a classroom setting. Did that answer your question?
We need to make sure the parents see this so they know what's coming for this school year, the changes. It's very important.
Chris, I just want to say thank you to the administration for the work you've done on this plan. And I think as a board, we've always felt that education is essential and that getting kids in the classroom is essential and doing it safely. And I mean, I think things worked well in the spring, and I think that this is reasonable and a smart plan based on the current atmosphere of where things are. I think it makes sense. The contact tracing is not something that we have invented. That's from the state. So that could change at any point in time as well. But it's good to see that it looks like there'll be a much closer to normal year for the kids, and that really, if the masks are optional, that at least on the bus, they would wear them as well, for sure. But otherwise, in the classroom, they would be optional. So as far as kids, they'll all be treated the same whether they wear a mask or not. I would understand that, correct?
Correct, and I know Mr. Sable and I have gotten several questions from parents concerned if their child chooses to wear a mask, how will they be treated? And I did share our Safe School helpline. That is an anonymous way to report any concerns you have about bullying or harassment. Again, I'm not naive, but I also we won't tolerate that type of behavior, but I also want there to be a resource in case you feel like that's happening at any level. So we want to make sure that's true. But yes, the expectation is you'll see lots of people. I know Mr. Sable and I have talked. We plan on wearing masks, and a lot of administrators do, just so the kids who have masks on are comfortable with wearing masks. But there should be no different treatment whether you're wearing a mask or not.
And then, it's probably more with OHSAA, but will the procedures in place for sports stay the same as last year at this point, do you know?
Todd would be a better one to ask that, but the OHSAA releases I have seen, and we have had sports all summer, they are not the same. They were very strict for spectators and other things, and a lot of those will not be in place anymore, limiting visitors. But OHSA and the health department still do recommend people maintain social distance at the games, but it will not be, we don't need a COVID officer at the games. There's no COVID checklist. I don't know if some of you were at soccer games where they couldn't do their traditional introductions, and some of those things aren't in place anymore.
Thank you. Do others have questions?
Yes.
Just a quick question. How does the current plan compare to what was used over the summer, with the schooling over the summer? And then also, I guess, what was the experience of the summer programs that happened?
So we had an in-person summer school at the elementary, and these plans would have been very similar to that. And we didn't do we didn't have any quarantining that I'm aware of in the summer. And I do most of the contact tracing, or I'm involved in it. Sports and band have started this summer. We've had 2 positive cases, but no contact tracing. And then our middle school and high school, summer school was virtual. So in all fairness, there really isn't, we weren't involved in that necessarily. So, but I do feel good about band and sports have been back for some time now.
Dr. Kwolek, I have a quick question. On this flow chart, I don't see a branch that shows if the contact exposed had COVID previously. What if they had that COVID, if they were COVID positive 2 months ahead of that, do they have to quarantine?
So that's a good question. I think we would check, the person would check with the health department. I would assume, but I don't assume anymore, I ask, because my 8th grade teacher told me about that, but I would assume it's the same as vaccinated, because I think it's either 60 days. If you've had COVID within 60 days, you're treated the same as a vaccinated person. But let me check that while you're asking. I have an email which has it.
Okay.
So if you've been positive within a certain number of days, you also didn't have to be quarantined.
And I think it's 90 days, from what I understand.
Yep, let me check. I feel like that's one I better check, because I feel like it changed.
Yeah, and if so, if there is a way that we can add that or make this document ours, I know it shows the Ohio Department of Health logo at the bottom, but if that is the case, that path should be added to the document we use.
And what I would do is email the Department of Health and ask them to add it, because it really should be there.
Oh, for sure. Thank you.
Dr. Quallen? The question I have, I also want to thank you for all your work. You're doing a lot of great things and thinking about the kids, so much appreciated. I agree with Rob. But my question is, are the other districts in the county following in line with what we're doing pretty similarly, or are we doing something different?
So as far as I know, and Aaron and I talked to, I think, all the county superintendents right before this meeting, and everyone is doing very similar things to us, as I know of right now. I think Buckeye has their board meeting tomorrow night. I talked to Wadsworth, I've talked to Brunswick, Cloverleaf, so we are all in a similar position. Again, I need to say, as of right now, we're all doing the same thing in Medina County. Any other questions? Okay.
So as far as this plan, you're not asking us to vote on this tonight? You're just,
Correct.
okay. And some of the framework of this has been submitted to the state. Maybe not every specific, correct? But the general framework has been submitted for approval, because we had to file a plan with, is it ODE?
Correct. We had to
Okay.
file a plan. Every district has to file their plan with ODE. And one of the biggest things they want to know is, are you returning in person or virtual?
So tonight, you're not asking us to vote on this. We will have, maybe people want to discuss this in public discussion tonight, and that's fine, but we're not voting on this tonight, per se. But we have a couple other action items.
Correct.
So, okay. Any other board comments on this? Okay. All right. And do you want to go ahead then? You did 1, 2, and 3, so now it's the action items. You want to go ahead and present those?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So your first action item tonight is an agreement with Partner Marketing. They're going to sell advertisements on our virtual football tickets and our other tickets for sporting events. So we will get a portion of that advertising. So it's another great way for the district to make some income on something we already do, which is sell tickets.
Okay, so we'll take them one at a time. We could, if somebody would like to make a motion to approve action item 1.
I'll make a motion to approve action item 1.
Thank you, Mrs. Pavlik. Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Any questions or comments from the board?
Mr. Skidmore, I thought that we were doing these as a group because they're not broken out separately, or?
No, we're taking them separate.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. So, any questions or comments on number 1?
Wait, just one question, simple question. We got that new scoreboard. This has nothing to do with the new scoreboard. This
No,
is-
this is a separate income generator.
Okay, but not advertising on that. This is...
No, this is on the actual digital tickets that you buy. So when you buy a ticket for the football game, you usually pull it up on your phone. It'll be advertisements on there.
Oh, I got you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and if the board is done with their questions or comments, we would open it up to the public for questions or comments at this moment related to number 1 only. If you would like to speak about number 1 that we're voting on, and we're using, I don't know if you know this, we're using board docs. If you go to the school's website, medinabees.org, you can go down and follow the agenda. I should have said that at the beginning. I apologize, I didn't. But you can follow along in the agenda. So before we vote, we allow public comment on that. So that's number 1. If nobody's gone up to a mic, then we will move on from number 1. And if you could call roll, please.
Yes, Ms. Pavlik.
Aye.
Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Mr. Harrison.
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Aye.
And Mr. Skidmore.
Aye.
Thank you.
The next item is a service contract for Mike Wessner. If you remember, this year he's provided security for us. And so the contract is a renewal of that for this school year. And there's no increase other than the additional $5,000 that we added last year to reflect the number of days and hours he worked.
I'll make a motion to approve the action item.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Parkhurst. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Any questions or comments from the board? Any questions or comments from the public on action item number 2? Hearing none, if you could call roll.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Aye.
Mr. Harrison.
Aye.
Ms. Pavlik.
Aye.
Mr. Ross.
Aye.
And Mr. Skidmore.
Abstain.
Thank you.
All right, and then our last item is the biggest one. It's our personnel, which is, as I shared, a very busy time this summer. The other administrative appointment was Judy Gardner, who we're very excited about at the high school to have as a prevention coordinator. She'll help a lot of our students with mental health supports. We are sad to see Joe Gaudio, one of our associate principals at the high school, has left us to go work at the Northern Ohio ESC, so we were sad to lose him, but again, very excited. We'll present the new staff member to you that we hired later today. So a long list of staff, and I expect that to continue into the next board meeting as well.
Okay, so that's action item number 3, are these personnel items that are listed in the agenda.
Make a motion to approve action item 3.
Thank you, Mr. Ross.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Parkhurst. Any questions or comments from the board?
Mr. Skidmore, I do have one question. The agreement on the administrative psychologist intern, intern versus a regular employee, if you could, Dr. Pollack, if you could clarify that?
Sure. There's a major shortage of school psychologists right now. So a school psychologist intern can do everything a school psychologist can, just with a little bit of supervision. So it's a good way to help someone, but also to fill a need in the district.
Do you anticipate that they may become a permanent employee after their internship? How long do they have to do a couple years intern?
It's a one-year internship. So it's hard to know. It's also a way to get a look at someone to see if they're a good fit for the district, so.
Definitely, I agree, for sure.
Yeah. And sorry, it took me a little while, but Val's correct, it's 90 days post-COVID, so I'm sorry that I said 60. I just want to make sure I clarify, it's 90 days. Just to go back, if you've had COVID within the last 90 days, you're also treated as if you don't have to quarantine.
Thank you for clarifying that, because the reason I brought that up is an Ohio college, a college in Ohio, this recent or soon-to-be freshman there had a positive COVID test, and they are accepting that. They wanted that on file there so that, as far as quarantine, so I figure if the colleges are doing it, that's good for us.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board on action item 3? Hearing none. Any other questions? Public participation related to number 3, our action item that we're going to vote. If anybody from the public would like to address the board on that, you're welcome at this time. Otherwise, if you could please call roll.
Mr. Ross?
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst?
Aye.
Mr. Harrison?
Aye.
Ms. Pavlik?
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, and if we could get that third sheet from Lisa. And what we'll do, so this is the time in our agenda that we do public participation. So I'm going to read some things to you about the public participation, and then we'll call down in the batting order of those that have signed up tonight. If I miss you, please let me know here before we conclude the public participation, and we'll make sure that we allow you to have your time to speak to us. It looks like we have 7, 8, 9, 10. So is that perfect? We have 30 minutes generally, and we have 3 minutes per person. Do we still have a time clock tonight? We do. Look at that. Thank you, Mr. O'Call. That's awesome. That's great. So I don't know how this could work perfectly, but it looks like we have like 10 people for 3-minute slots, but maybe we'll have another person or two, but we try to keep it to 30 minutes. So let me read you this, and then we'll get right into it. If we need to take a break, we'll take a break as we get further into this, and we might if anybody wants to take a break. But community members wishing to address the board are asked to abide by the following guidelines. Attendees shall register their intention to participate in the public portion of the meeting upon their arrival at the meeting. After those that have registered have spoken, if time allows, the board president will ask for public participation from other attendees. When you come up to the lectern there or to the microphone, please state your name, address, and affiliation. Please keep your comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. No participant may speak more than once on the same topic unless all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question board members individually. So our first person that we have tonight, I have Robert Morford on Andrews. If Robert's here, there he is. I feel like we're on The Price is Right. Come on down.
Good evening. Bob Morford, Andrews Road. Appreciate all your efforts you do for the Edina City Schools. I truly do appreciate it, and you're not in an easy position, and I acknowledge that. And thank you for what you do. We're all different people, and we have different ways of thinking, and coming to some conclusions that some people like and some people don't. As Mr. Sable said, masks provide an excellent way to prevent the transmission of COVID. And yet, there is still the choice being presented to people to wear them or not. So if they're so effective in being used, why are people being given the choice to not wear them? If it's so effective, if our student safety is of the utmost importance. Because I think we're all under the recommendation to be wearing masks because we're inside right now. Okay? If that being said,
Excuse me, let's please keep order. This is his 3 minutes. Let's let him have his 3 minutes. Let's. Well, okay, keep your addressing to the.
Okay.
That's a good point. But let's keep order. Let's be respectful to everybody that has different opinions. Okay, please. I hope you paused him for a second, Ryan. Go ahead. Please continue.
I suggest to you that this is probably roughly the ratio of masks that you will see with an optional or recommendation to wear masking, and that will not be effective in preventing the spread in the school. And simultaneously, why are you making the kids and the parents choose this difficult choice? If health care is so important, if the care of our health of our children are so important, again, choice. Why are we going to the bare minimum and not striving to do everything that we can when face masks are of little cost to the school system and they're relatively easy to be worn, and yet do so much? Is there a response?
Just to clarify, again, pause this time. This is not a Q&A, okay? So this is your time to give a statement to us, and generally we don't answer questions during this period. So we might on rare occasion, but generally we haven't. So this is your opportunity to make your 3-minute statement. So I'm sorry. Go ahead and continue. Thank you. Okay, thank you. And Mr. Morford, we also got an email from your, I think Nicole was sent to the board as well, and we've read that as well, and you both had really good remarks and comments with those. So thank you very much, both of you. Okay, and next I think we have Kim Gordon.
Kim Gordon, 6617 Cobblefield Drive. I'm here tonight not to beg you for rights I already have and that my 3 sons have. I am not here for the school board members because you have taken your oath and you know what is expected of you. I am here for all parents. Masks, no masks. Vaccine, no vaccine. The bottom line is that it is the right of the parents, moms and dads, to make the choice what is best for their sons and daughters. These are our God-given rights, And we, the people, get to choose our constitutionally protected rights and the oath you took as administrators to protect us from those who wish to abuse that power. My 3 boys will not be wearing masks in the classroom or on the bus, nowhere. All men by nature, free and independent, have certain inalienable rights, among which those are enjoying and defending life and liberty, acquiring, possessing, and protecting property. Let me say this again, protecting property. My kids are my property. This past year, the school board, administrators, and many teachers failed to do their due diligence in upholding their oath and bylaws, which dictates your sole responsibility to protect the rights of the people. We don't have time to go through every violation, but here are examples of just a few pertaining to masks, the mask editions. Parents, listen up, because this is what your children, your sons and daughters experienced. Mask breaks. Students may remove, and this was in the bylaws, may remove face coverings when appropriate social distancing measures in place are determined by a teacher, coach, or administrator. There was a total abuse of power. Kids were bullied, yelled at, harassed, and discriminated against. These children at all levels were not allowed mask breaks, not while sitting at their desks, in the classroom, and behind plexiglass. They had to wear them on the playground in extreme heat. My son came home with a bloody nose every day. Teachers having open hallway discussions regarding their political beliefs and calling parents unconstitutionalist. These are your teachers. The title regarding face shields. Face shields for any individual having difficulty wearing face coverings. My son has severe allergies. He wore a face shield. He was kicked out of class, made an example of, and his grades may have even been affected. For language and English, when hindering the learning process, face covers should be removed. When interacting with English language learners or teaching a foreign language. Foreign language teachers wore cloth masks, sat behind desks, and would not allow students to come to their desk, or vice versa. Would not leave and let the students leave their individual desks. These are just to name a few. I ask the board members, are you aware of what's going on in your buildings? You want to preach and incorporate equality, but only on certain terms.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay, next speaker, I have a Jim. I'm sorry, I can't read your last name. It's on Summerwood Drive. Jim, possibly. There we go. Welcome. Come on down, Jim.
Tim.
I apologize, Tim.
Officer Ross, thanks for your service. So, okay.
Please come down to the mic because it's televised, so come on down. Thank you.
How are you? Let freedom ring! Now I am the third speaker. I don't have any prepared remarks, but there's one word that I hope everybody mentions here today, and that maybe a few words, the slow creep to communism. Now, I understand that you have a job to do. I'm not denying that, but that's what this is. And if they can't get it done legally, they'll stop at Giant Eagle, they'll stop at Bueller's, the local barber shop, and if you don't have your vaccination card, you're not coming in. So it doesn't matter where it is. This is about freedom, okay? I live in Seville. Now, thankfully, for right now, my kids are going to private school, but there may come a time when they go to public schools, God forbid. Because there are so many things that need to be changed, not only in the school system, because some schools apparently are going to be switching to pass and fail. Now, if I, as a conservative Republican, are going up against a liberal Democrat teacher, what are the odds that if pass-fail is the only grading system, I'm going to succeed? So, I just want to say it, liberty, don't restrict kids, and here's another thing. Is it faith over fear, or is it fear over faith? Before this thing called COVID, whatever that is, before...
Yeah, order. Well, I'm sorry. He lives in the school district, and it doesn't matter if he does or doesn't. He's still welcome to speak. Please add a couple seconds, Ryan. Go ahead. Mr. Gordon, please. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Before this thing called COVID started, whatever that is, how did people survive? You know, the people who wear masks now, whatever, when they didn't wear masks at that time, how did life go on? And the other thing is, and I'm just trying to be honest, I have personal responsibility. Everybody in this room has personal responsibility. And in my life, the most important thing to me, besides Jesus Christ, is me. There's no greater value to me than me. And so I'm just saying that one thing for us to factor in is hype. Just the basic concept that the media can hype this up, and even President Trump, when he was in office, he did, in my opinion, he did the best that he could, but this was a hype thing. And it continues to be a hype thing, Lambda, Delta, these things, to get us scared. And I don't care, even if Joe Biden is president, it's still to whip up fear to bring on that terrible word of communism.
Thank you.
Excuse me, sir. For the record, could you state your name and your address in the mic, because I wasn't able to catch it because I think there was some mispronunciation or something, please? Thank you.
Tim Torok, 5260 Summerwood Drive, Seville, Ohio, 44273-8941.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Francesca, please, you're next, Francesca. Come on down.
Not meant for short people. Good evening, board members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. At this point, we have had several meetings discussing the rights of parents to care for our own children with respect to their health and whether or not we wish to mask and or vax our children. We hope that we have made it abundantly clear that we as parents are in charge of our children's health, and you were elected to represent us at large. You are, by definition, only responsible for educating our children and reasonably protecting them from harm while in your care. I would hope that by this point you have actually taken the time to read all the numerous amounts of information we have presented to you over the past year and a half. We have given you numerous medical studies to read and understand. Let me assure you that it is no small task to gather all this medical evidence for you. In my last testimony before you, I told you that the burden of proof lies on you now to do the same amount of legwork and prove to us why you make the decisions you do and present to us the studies from which you make these decisions. We need your science. At this point, we ask that you actually follow the science, and the science is clear. Masks do not protect anyone from a micron-sized virus. It never has, it never will. It's scientifically and statistically impossible. Just to reiterate the science for you, the most recent Stanford study, which I have for you again, the physical properties of a medical and non-medical face mask suggest that face masks are ineffective to block viral particles due to their difference in scale. According to the current knowledge, the CoV-2 has a diameter of 60 nanometers to 140 nanometers. That's 1 billionth of a meter, while medical and non-medical face masks thread diameter reaches from 55 to 444 micrometers, 1 millionth of a meter, which is more than 1,000 times larger. Due to this difference in size between SARS-CoV-2 diameter and face mask thread diameter, The virus is 1,000 times smaller and can easily pass through any face mask. There is simply no sound science anywhere to be found that proves that wearing a mask does anything to protect anyone from this particular virus, or any virus. Yet these same masks have been proven to be a breeding ground for pneumonia, tuberculosis, meningitis, sepsis, bloodstream infections, UTIs which are resistant to antibiotics. Masks provide a warm, moist environment for bacteria to grow. I want to remind you that masks, COVID tests, and vaccines are all still under emergency use authorization. As such, informed consent must be given to undertake any of these measures. By now, you should understand that it is unlawful for you to force anyone, especially children, into any medical intervention. This includes mask tests and the shot. Our children are protected by the Bill of Rights, ADA, U.S. Constitution, First and Fourth Amendment, U.S. Title 52, Civil Rights.
Sorry, your time. Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Skidmore?
Yes.
Can we also please remind the speakers to state their name and address as they approach the microphone, please? For the
Yes.
permanent record, thank you.
Yes.
6104 Triple Crown Drive, Francesca Bramchuk, Medina. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I have Julie Sema on Timber Creek. And then after Julie, we had two question marks, Heather O'Neill and Jennifer Zaisu. So if either of you want to speak, let us know next. Okay.
Julie Sums, 4891 Timber Creek Drive, Medina Township, Ohio. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to the board and Mr. Sable for moving Medina schools forward with masks optional in the new school year. Thank you for understanding that there is no one-size-fits-all policy when it comes to anyone's medical considerations. I'm here to ask that in light of this decision that the board and Mr. Sable please continue to keep that in the forefront of your minds in the coming weeks and months ahead. It is my hope that as we start the school year and head into the flu season, that you will remain vigilant in keeping our students in person at the schools. Virtual or remote learning may work well for some kids, but it does not work well for others. Our oldest, who graduated in May, I can tell you, she did remote, and she probably learned zip. I would also like to ask you that you please be mindful of the divisive rhetoric that seems to be coming from a local social media page of a contingent of community members and sadly a few teachers towards children and parents who make different health and medical decisions than they do. We all know the social media page of which I speak of. To say I've been appalled and saddened by some of the comments that have come from Medina school parents and supposed community leaders would be an understatement. Comments of calling kids the unmaskinated is discriminatory and divisive. Comments calling for mandatory masking without excuse, and even so far as suggesting a separate classroom for those who wish to forego a mask are alarming. Months ago, a comment was even made that teen suicide was not an issue during the pandemic, as it is always present. I hope that this rhetoric will not spread to our students and that there will be zero tolerance for comments, actions, and policies, including quarantining those who don't wear masks or are unvaccinated, any type of health discrimination that comes from teachers, staff, and students. Grown adults having zero compassion and empathy for kids' physical, mental, and emotional health show we have a long way to go in the being kind and respectful department. No one wants to see a child suffer from COVID, but I also don't want to see a child or teen feel that 2020 isolation again. COVID matters, but so does teen suicide and depression. Neither has greater importance over the other. I hope that the administration and board members acknowledge that and remember that in any future decisions to be made. And I would also like to add to the record that the health department does not make law, and the CDC does not make law. These are guidelines. They're guidelines. And while I understand that you have a responsibility to keep the students safe, they are guidelines. And by quarantining those because they did not wear a mask or they're not vaccinated, some for medical reasons, that's divisive and it is discriminatory. And you don't have to do that. You have the power to stop that. And I hope that is what this board will do. Thank you.
again, normally we don't ask questions, but I just want to clarify, the school district never quarantines anyone, only the health department does. So I just wanted to make sure for clarification purposes.
Are you giving the health department names?
So again, I don't want to get into a back and forth, but again, we give information that we're required to because COVID is a Class A medical condition, so we're required by law to do that, but the Medina City School District does not quarantine anybody.
Okay, Heather O'Neill, if you want to speak.
Heather O'Neill, 5563 Rosemont Way. I just would like to say, first of all, ditto to everyone who's spoken out against masks and mask mandates and all these things that I think do not protect liberty for the majority of the people. And I would say that, if there are people that have fears of COVID, that their fears do not trump my constitutional rights or the constitutional rights of my children. There are a lot of things to be afraid of, but if we did things like this for everything that someone had a fear of, it wouldn't be a very nice place to live. And I just think that, liberty is the most important thing, freedom is the most important thing. I would encourage the board to ask themselves if this masking is so important, why are none of you wearing one this evening? It doesn't make any sense to me, and why are kids going to have to go to school in masks, or not in masks, or make that optional at this point, but get on a bus and put a mask on for the time period they're on the bus, but get off and go to school without a mask until you guys all decide on whatever day that something maybe, a few kids get sick or that they're going to have to mask up again. I don't understand the rules that don't make sense, and, there's just no continuity in what's going on, and I think parents have a right to question that there's just nothing makes sense. So I would just say, we elect you in this locality. You need to protect our children, as other people have said, protect the rights of everyone involved. But if people have fears, I respect that they wear a mask. That is their choice. But then respect my choice or my children's choice to not wear a mask, because there's no reason that anyone should be able to force that on another person. And I don't think there's enough health information out there that would suggest that masks work. And there's a lot of medical information to say that they don't. So please just remember that for our children. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer? Okay, thank you, Jennifer. All right. And next list, we have Megan Hyde. Yeah, Megan, yep.
Hi, Megan Hyde, 909 Norwegianwood Drive. I spoke to you guys at the May 17th meeting, and I do thank you for a change happening at the end of the school year. I do appreciate that. It was a little give that you gave us to not have our kids wear a mask at the end. I do appreciate that, so it's not all bad-mouthing all of you, okay? I did appreciate that, seeing my child's face running out of school, so happy, all the kids happy and playing and not, I feel like a terrified look on their face when they had a mask on their face, okay? Some things that I wanted to talk about, the board in general had talked about that it can be brought to the school's attention if there is discrimination against children who want to wear a mask. I hope that there will be an option for us to address if a kid is discriminated for not wanting to wear a mask. It is both sides. Please leave that open that way. The issue of choice. It is a choice. I am an American. I chose to have a child. I chose to move to Medina. I chose to get up this morning. That is my choice. So yes, we do have a choice to wear a mask or vaccinate, and that's where that comes from. I hate to ask a question. I know I'm not going to get an answer, but something to think about. If the vaccine is eventually mandated or finally approved by the FDA, will it be included in vaccines required for children to attend school? That I think is a big concern. Will there be a homeschool option if next week children are made to wear masks 24/7? Where there'll be a homeschool option to do that, such as MODA, or do I have to pick an online one myself instead? I question the parents that are for the masks just because online things for Medina and things I have been told I'm an attacker, I'm stupid because I don't follow along with what the CDC or pediatrics says. If I followed along with everything the CDC and pediatrics says, my kid probably wouldn't be 7 years old already. Okay, he falls, he gets hurt, I don't jump and freak out and pop a Band-Aid on it. We walk it off, so I don't follow everything that everybody else says. Did the families who are for masks when we go back to school, were their children and their entire families masked this whole entire summer while they were on vacations in Florida or anywhere else? I don't know. That makes a question to me. The effectiveness of a mask, please sneeze into a mask and tell me if it doesn't go through, because I have clearly seen snot on a mirror. With a mask on, it goes right through. I do follow certain things and I listen to what the CDC and what everybody else says, but then I take a moment and I think for a second. And then I think back to where I was told last year, just wear a mask for 2 weeks and we'll fix everything. So that's when I start to question. You told me that, so I'm going to kind of push back a little bit. And I'm going to use my thought.
Thank you. Okay, and we have Joycelyn Kopak and Emily as well. If you both want to come on up, that'd be great. You each get 3 minutes, though, but thank you.
Jocelyn Kopic, 3838 Weymouth Woods Drive. Yes, I pay a lot of property taxes that go to this school.
To address your comment about, gee, it's hard to believe we're 18 months into this and still having a problem, and I would suggest the reason we still have a problem is because we're doing things that are not useful, and we're getting our sources of information from the Indiana State Board of Health and the CDC, who actually don't bother to read science before they do this. I'm actually a functional family medicine physician. That means I am specially trained in immunology and inflammation regulation, and everything being recommended by the CDC and the State Board of Health is actually contrary to all the rules of science. So things you should know about coronavirus and all other respiratory viruses, they are spread by aerosol particles, which are small enough to go through every mask. By the way, the literature that supports all of that is in a flash drive that we presented to you. It's been given to the Secretary. As a matter of fact, it quotes at least 3 studies sponsored by the NIH to that exact fact, even though the CDC and the NIH have chosen to ignore the very science that they paid to have done. That is why you keep struggling with this, is because you cannot make these viruses go away. The natural history of all respiratory viruses is that they circulate all year long, waiting for the immune system to get sick through the winter or become deranged, as has happened recently with these vaccines, and then they cause symptomatic disease. Because they cannot be filtered out, and they have animal reservoirs, and this is a very important point, no one can make this virus go away. The CDC has managed to convince everybody that we can handle this like we did smallpox, where we could make a virus go away. They have animal reservoirs. And this is a very important point. No one can make this virus go away. The CDC has managed to convince everybody that we can handle this like we did smallpox, where we could make a virus go away. Smallpox had no animal reservoirs. The only thing it learned to infect was humans. That's why we were able to make that virus go away. That will not happen with this any more than it will with influenza, the common cold, respiratory syncytial virus, adenoviral respiratory syndromes, or anything else that has animal reservoirs. So the reason you can't do this is because you're trying to do something which has already been tried and can't be done. Equally important is that vaccination changes none of this, especially with this vaccine. And I would hope this board would start asking itself, before it considers taking the advice of the CDC, the NIH, and the State Board of Health, why we are doing things about this that we didn't do for the common cold, influenza, or respiratory syncytial virus. And then ask yourself, why is a vaccine that is supposedly so effective having a breakout in the middle of the summer when respiratory viral syndromes don't do that? And to help you understand that, you need to know the condition that is called antibody-mediated viral enhancement. That is a condition done when vaccines work wrong, as they did in every coronavirus study done in animals on coronaviruses after the SARS outbreak, and done in respiratory syncytial virus, where a vaccine used in a vulnerable individual done the wrong way, which cannot be done right for a respiratory virus which has a very low pathogenicity rate, causes the immune system to actually fight the virus wrong and let the virus become worse than it would with native infection. And that is why you are seeing an outbreak right now. In fact, in that flash drive you're going to have coming to you and in the emails from 6 extra-year-olds, a study showing that 75% of people who had COVID-19...
Thank you. That's your 3 minutes. Now, if you want to continue it, that's fine, but it's your daughter's 3 minutes now.
Hey, can you clarify who that is? Who is talking?
Who's speaking? It's a doctor?
It's a doctor.
But who?
I have a copy of it, Rob, I can send it to you.
Okay, I'm sorry, but, okay, so continue on there. If you want to address, is this Emily then? If you want to address the board, go ahead.
Positive symptom cases in Barnstable, Massachusetts outbreak were fully vaccinated. Therefore, there is no reason for treating any person vaccinated any differently than any person unvaccinated. You should also know that no vaccine, even the ones I support and would give to myself and my children, ever stops infection. In 2014, there was outbreak of mumps in the National Hockey League. The only people who came down with symptoms were the people who were unvaccinated or unknown vaccine status. Boy, that sounds like a great argument for vaccines. But a question that you should ask yourself, knowing that half of the people who came down with symptomatic disease had no contact with an unvaccinated or unknown vaccine status individual, where did they get the disease? And the answer was from the vaccinated individuals. No vaccine prevents you from getting infection. You get infected, you shed pathogen. This is especially true of viral respiratory pathogens. You just don't get symptomatic from it. So you cannot stop spread. You cannot make these numbers that you've planned on get better by doing any of the things you're doing, because that is the nature of viral respiratory pathogens. And you can't prevent it with a vaccine because they don't do the very thing you're wanting them to do. And you will be chasing this the remainder of your life until you recognize that the Center for Disease Control and the Indiana State Board of Health are giving you very bad scientific guidance. And instead, read the articles that are going to come on the email and are on this flash drive, and listen to the people in this audience here tonight who actually have recognized the advice they are getting from the CDC and the NIH is counterfactual. And that's why you're still fighting this with this vaccine that supposedly was going to make all of this go away, but has suddenly managed to make an outbreak of COVID-19 develop in the middle of the summer when vitamin D levels are at their highest. By the way, the other thing that would be necessary, any vaccine restriction to be considered, is if there were no other treatment available. And I can tell you, having treated over 15 COVID-19 patients, that between active loading with vitamin D, ivermectin, and zinc, that there is not a single person who has come anywhere near the hospital. And we already have studies that show that if you achieve a 25-hydroxyvitamin D level greater than 55, your risk of COVID-19 death will drop down to 1/4 of the population average for the United States. And there are active treatment trials included on that flash drive, but this show the same is true. So if you were going to discriminate based upon vaccine, you should also discriminate based upon 25-hydroxyvitamin D level, zinc taste test response, and probably previous infection, since there are also studies on that flash drive that show that people who have recovered from COVID-19 infection actually get no benefit from vaccination at all, no reduction in symptoms, no reduction in hospitalization, and suffer 2 to 4 times the rate of side effects if they are subsequently vaccinated. Therefore, the policies that you are basing on are totally counterfactual. I don't blame this board for that, because I know you aren't scientists and you've thought it was reasonable to listen to the CDC, NIH, and the Indiana State Board of Health. But I would encourage that instead you listen to the people out here in this audience and read what's on that data drive. And if anybody here in this board has any questions about anything on that, I will happily come back and sit with...
Doctor?
Okay. All right, next, Ann Manzi, you're next, and then Mr. Kuhar, if one of you wants to get ready at the other mic, that's fine too. So Ann?
I'm going to keep this short and sweet, just like me. My name is Ann Manzi, 3985 Sunset Drive. A lot of the parents already have said and iterated everything I was going to say. I just want to restate the fact that mandates are not laws, and that the CDC is not a lawmaking branch. It is a regulatory agency, and so Anything they do are recommendations and guidelines, so we do not have to follow them to a T. And there is a question of busing that came up, and I had found that Ohio Revised Code, Section 5501.01 states that public transportation does not include school bus transportation. So when the CDC says it's required on bus, that's a great recommendation, but I believe Ohio law trumps CDC recommendations and should be considered when doing masks on bus. Masks should be optional on bus, just like they are in the classroom, as you have right now. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Mr. Kuhar?
Mark Kuhar, Shorewood Drive in Medina. First, I wanted to say welcome to Mr. Harrison. The past year, the board and the school district took on a very difficult situation with COVID in the community, and I think you did a very good job. You had to juggle a lot of different things, a number of different balls in the air, tried to satisfy a lot of different people, and you did a really good job with it. I have every confidence that in this coming school year, you're going to do the same good job, and I would hope that I would hope that whatever action you take, you'll take and take into consideration the majority of the community and what the majority of the community feels would be the best approach. And I have one question that I'd like you to address, if you could, real quick, because I'm going to have a couple of minutes left of my time. The CDC recommendations, or I'm sorry, the school district COVID recommendations that you put up that said draft on them, can you explain, are those going to be further developed before being voted on at the next meeting? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kuhar. Is there anybody else that would like to speak tonight that didn't sign up? I think we have time for one or two more. We have one here. Come on down to the mic. Please state your name, address, and if you could go ahead and get queued up by the mic.
If I could go ahead and do what?
Please state your name, address.
Tracy Cassation, 5803 Rosemont Way. Okay, first off, I'm going to read Article 1, Section 2 of the Ohio Constitution. All political power is inherent in the people. Government is instituted for the people's, equal protection and benefit, and they have the right to alter, reform, or abolish the same whenever they may deem it necessary. And no special privileges or immunities shall ever be granted that may not be altered, revoked, or repealed by General Assembly. We are a republic. Individual rights. You want to wear a mask? Wear a mask. You don't want to wear a mask? Rip it off. Stop wearing the mask. They don't tell you what your rights are. You do. You are private people. You are one of the people who created a trust indenture. A trust indenture was written by the people for these people so they would not abridge or overpower the people ever again. Stand in who you are, stand in your right, and stand in your privacy. You are private individuals. You are private people. You are one of the people. Say no. No is a sentence. Thank you.
Please state your name and address.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Bob Picorni. I'm at 1118 Alexandria Lane in Medina. I've got two children, stepchildren, in Medina High School right now, junior and a sophomore, both heavily involved in track and cross country, and they would like to stay heavily involved in those things. And I'm kind of an optional mask type of a guy. Most of the people I know and hang around with, I've known for 15 or more years. I know their situation. I know if they have little kids. And I make the choice whether to wear a mask or not. If I'm in a situation where I don't know the people, I wear a mask. So I am a optional mask type of a guy. You guys have tough decisions. Whenever I'm not sure of a decision I have to make, I defer to the experts. I sell insurance. I don't, no matter how many studies I study on COVID, I'm not going to be as smart as the doctors who work with it every day and have studied this for their entire lives. So I defer to the experts. And in my eyes right now, the experts is the CDC. I know it's a recommendation, and I would almost think that the school board would be negligent if they also did not defer to the experts and go along with their recommendations. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Okay. And Mr. Kuhar, Dr. Kwolek will get back to you on that question later. Okay, so this is the time. We've had public participation. We thank everybody for coming out tonight. At this time, I'm going to make a motion that we go in executive session to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, compensation of a public employee or official, also for preparation for conducting or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Do we know who is going to go in with us tonight, Dr. Kwolek?
Mr. Sable and Mr. Shields. And
Mr.
myself.
Sable will be online, or
He will.
that way, Mr. Shields. And, all right, could you please call roll?
Yes, Mr. Skidmore.
Aye.
Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Mr. Harrison.
Aye.
Ms. Pavlik.
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Aye.
Thank you.
We will not take action when we come out of executive session. Thank you.